Ghana's members of parliament are demanding the immediate sacking of the finance minister and his deputy over alleged mismanagement of the economy, excessive government spending, illegal payment of oil revenues into offshore accounts and alleged conflict of interest. MPs have threatened to boycott further parliament activity, such as the forthcoming 2023 budget hearing.
A majority of lawmakers from Ghana's ruling party have called on the president to sack Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. That's as well as his deputy, as the country faces its worst economic crisis in a generation. They say it would be in order to restore hope in the financial sector. Members of parliament from the ruling NPP party have said they will not take part in any business of government and would boycott budget hearings until their demands are met. Opposition MPs meanwhile said on Tuesday they would soon table a motion for Ofori-Atta's impeachment. Parliament is set to begin debating the 2023 budget in the coming days. Last week its currency, the cedi, fell nearly 20% against the dollar, hitting its lowest in 15 years. And consumer inflation is hovering at over 37%. That's a 21-year high. Nearly half of all Ghana's government revenue goes toward interest payments, meaning the country may have to restructure its debt to secure a deal with the International Monetary Fund. Ofori-Atta had repeatedly pledged not to seek IMF assistance before finally engaging the fund in July.
For more on this, we joined now by Ghana financial journalist Sani Abdul-Rahman. Sani, a very good evening to you. Let's talk about this. The finance minister being accused of excessive government spending. Take us through what he has been accused of doing exactly, and is his team seen as complicit, particularly the executive as a whole?
So first of all, the government, on the back of anticipation of significant oil revenue, rolled out some expensive social programs such as the free senior high school in Ghana here. Also, there was a financial sector cleanup exercise that cost the nation so much. We also saw some agreements with private power producers being renegotiated to save the country some money. These caused some issues with the fiscals of the country. There were concerns also about the size of the government, which many had seen to be costly to a nation like Ghana. And because of the country's low revenue generation capacity, the government led by the finance minister was borrowing to finance some of these programs and exercises, which have caused the nation's debt to rise to worrying levels, as you just indicated in the report. And we are learning from people inside the government that some of these programs, they were not adequately consulted. And for that matter, they came out asking for him to resign or they'll get him impeached.
And this is what I want to understand. Who do they trace culpability to? Because the finance minister naturally doesn't work in a vacuum. Does it go all the way up to the top, or do they blame the ministry and its execution of the economic plan?
What we are seeing since the assumption of this government is the fact that the finance minister appears to wield so much power, but we know almost all the policies that he has introduced got some sort of backing from the cabinet, that is at the highest level of governance in the country, because the laws will not allow him to do so without seeking the executive and parliamentary approval. But in the first term of the government, they had majority in parliament, which was quite okay for them to move any sort of programs that they wanted to, either with the support of the opposition party in parliament or not. So at the peak of this problem, many are calling on him as the main cause of the problem, because he had a very significant majority in parliament that allowed him to push through any sort of policy that he wanted to, despite calls from the civil society, who have called against some of these policies and also the minority in parliament.
We'll get back to the president in just a moment. Let's still focus on the finance minister. He's also accused of alleged conflict of interest. Is there proof to this effect?
Well, the finance minister has a financial services company that has been participating in Ghana's bond issuance even before he became a minister. But after his appointment, many had issues with his company still participating in such transactions because the rate at which the country was borrowing, he leading the country to borrow, had significantly increased. And knowing that his company received some sort of fees for its advisory services, concerns about conflict of interest were raised. So you cannot entirely attribute to, say there was a conflict of interest situation, but looking at his position and the fact that his company continues to participate in Ghana's bond issuance, concerns have been raised in that regard.
And earlier on, we had the president speak about the crisis in terms of the value of the cedi. He tends to point to the direction of the black market and how it's made an impact. But talk to us about the general factors, the quality of life in Ghana. We've seen street protests, and obviously it's not immune to the external factors that have been felt by many other countries across the globe.
Of course, COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine have impacted not just the Ghanaian economy, but global economy. But there were underlying challenges that got exacerbated as a result of the developments in Europe and the rest of the world. But the main issue is that the cedi has depreciated by more than 50% since the start of the year, and Ghana is largely an import-dependent country, which means prices of goods and services will significantly increase. On the fuel situation that we are seeing in the country currently, while the crude prices on the international market are declining, in Ghana it is rather appreciated because the gains that consumers will have enjoyed from the reduction of oil on the global market, the cedi depreciation is offsetting those gains. And this also is translating into higher food prices, making life quite difficult for a lot of people, because when you come through comments by a section of Ghanaians on social media, everyone is complaining about rising food prices and the rising living standard in the country, which has become very expensive.
So where do you see this conversation going? Is the finance minister likely to resign? Will he be pushed to do so by his administration? What is word on the ground?
Well, from the point of the president who appointed him, he seemed to enjoy some good support. The president seemed not ready to let him go because he's now asking the rebelling members of parliament who are asking for his sacking to allow him to conclude the deal with the International Monetary Fund before a decision can be taken about his fate as the finance minister. However, yesterday we saw only 80 MPs from the side of the majority asking for the sacking of the finance minister. This number has significantly gone up today. We heard from the government leader in parliament who said almost the entire side of the majority in parliament are now asking for the finance minister to be sacked. It is not the first time the finance minister has been asked to go. We've heard from the minority and some heavy voices in Ghana also calling for the sacking of the finance minister. And looking at how the market has been reacting to Ghana's bonds, looking at how we have been shut out of the international capital market as a result of our high debt levels and the fact that the confidence in the Ghanaian economy has declined significantly, it appears the president is left with little choice than to heed to the call of many Ghanaians, including his own party members who are in government with him, whom have been asking that the finance minister should be allowed to go.
So will that result in a rebound in the economy, or will it be something that's rather cosmetic? Because as we mentioned in the introduction, there's still the budget that will be tabled next year. And will that be a reflection of the individual or what has already been caucused by the administration?
Well, his resignation may help restore confidence in the Ghanaian economy and in the markets as well, because it appears he has lost trust of the markets and a section of his government people, and that is why they openly called for his resignation. So I think if he decides to go, or if the president pushes him out, as the members of parliament have been asking, the market will receive the news better, because he has led the Ghanaian economy in the last 6 years. He has enjoyed some goodwill from the market, and the market seeing him as the leader that spearheaded the current fiscal challenges. His resignation and the appointment of a new person to lead the finances of Ghana may engender some confidence.
Thank you so much for speaking to us on the Ghanaian financial reporter Sani Abdul-Rahman, just speaking to us about the fallout there in Ghana over calls for the finance minister to resign.